So welcome everybody. Let me just tell you one of the reasons I'm doing this is I'm a cybersecurity faculty. We all got together and we just really believe in the cybersecurity club, what you guys are doing some amazing things. We love the students too, just in general, you get the top-notch students here. And we were thinking of ways, well, how can we help you? Okay, and I think a lot of you know that I also teach in third and fourth year students at GW, and I teach graduate school at Mason. And I came up with the idea, well, let me introduce them to some of the advanced topics that we cover in later years in cyber that we don't cover in the first and second year at MC. So I started thinking up some topics, and one of them is Parrot OS, which is a competitor to Kali. I know a lot of our students are really interested in going to Pentesting. The standard in this program is Kali Linux, and there's a good reason for that. Kali Linux is the #1 pen testing distribution, right? But Parrot is becoming more and more popular, and I thought it might be a good idea to take you through the install process for those of you who wanted to play with Parrot at home, and also to show you what's different between using Parrot and Kali Linux, okay? So first thing I'm going to do, and if you have any questions, please just raise your hand. You know, I wanted this to be really casual, nothing formal. I do have a presentation on Parrot, but I didn't want to present that here. This is not a class, right? If after the presentation you want this Parrot presentation, email me, I'll send it to you. It's actually the presentation that I deliver at Mason on Parrot, okay? And actually, I do a little bit of Parrot in the NWA T275 class also. So I'll just show you how to get Parrot, because Parrot is one of those distributions that there's many versions of. They have a version for home. They have a version for IoT. They have a version that you can use for cloud. So probably the easiest way to find Parrot is just Google Parrot OS. And if you Google Parrot OS, you'll see it'll be the first link where it says Parrot Security over here. So you click on Parrot Security, it'll take you to the home page. You know your Parrot Security typically because you'll see this little parrot icon, which I think is pretty cool. A couple ways to get to the download page is you can click on this link on the bottom here, one on the top. If you want to read about Parrot, just just navigate through the website. But if you click on the download link, you'll notice it's going to take you to Parrot Security Edition. This is really the version that's designed for pen testing. Okay, so if you're looking for a distro that has security tools very similar to Kali, that's the one that you're going to pick. If you go down, you'll see it has a Home Edition. Home Edition is Parrot without the pen testing tools, right? Because you guys know, Kali is not designed to be like your main desktop. I don't know if some of you know that. It's really designed for a very specialized use. How do you know that? Well, it doesn't come with things like LibreOffice, right? So, for example, if you're looking for a distro for use at home, probably you're going to be using Ubuntu or you're going to be using Fedora. Those are probably the top two. There are other ones, and because when you look at the apps that come with them, they're more designed for doing things like writing emails. You know, they'll come with email client, they'll come with a Word client, Excel type client, etc. So that's what that is. It's basically for folks who just want to use it as their desktop at home. Notice they have a version for Hack the Box. Okay, so that's a cloud a Hack the Box version. Notice they have a cloud edition. They even have a version for Raspberry Pi. Okay, so if you want to put it on the Raspberry Pi, you can do that. But we're going to focus on the version that's the Security Edition. And when you download it, you just click on download. Guess what? I already did that to save us time. But all you have to do is go in here, click download. You'll notice that there's a couple of different versions. I picked the ISO version to download. Who can tell me why I did that as a security professional? Why didn't I pick the VirtualBox version or the UTM version, which is why?
You'll have more customization when setting it up.
Definitely. You get to customize it yourself. You're not using a setup that somebody else created with their root password, whatever the file system that they wanted. So that's one reason you want to do it. Anyone else know why we would use the ISO version?
It's a fresh install.
It's a fresh install. Remember that in cybersecurity, we teach not to use pre-configured VMs. Don't go out and download a pre-configured VDI, VMDK, VHD, VM. Because there have been instances of those VMs being Trojanized by threat actors and cybersecurity professionals installing them, and guess what? They're actually using a Trojanized virtual machine. So, you not only, and another thing related to the customization piece is that when you install and you do a Parrot, and you go through all the setup routine, now you know how to set up the operating system. Does that make sense? You know, you never know, you may find that in a technical interview. Okay, that's a common thing, you know, to ask someone, please install Kali, for example, from a source ISO. So if you use a VDI or a VM that's already been configured, you're losing out on that opportunity, you know, to know what to pick during the installation routine. So, like I said, I'm a big proponent, and when I teach, I always tell people, always do it from the ISO for the security reasons, the customization reasons. But they do offer a version for VirtualBox, which means it ends in VDI extension. And has anybody heard of UTM? That's actually a virtualization, a type 2 hypervisor for Mac. Okay, it's not free. Maybe that's why most people haven't heard of it. You got to pay, I think it's like $10 for it. This is probably the only site I've been to that offers a version for Mac, you know, for Mac VM. Okay. Now that said, you can still use VirtualBox right on Mac, right? You know, it's a VDI extension. As long as you have VirtualBox, you'll be able to install it. Doesn't matter what the OS is. So what I'm going to do, let's go through the install. That's where you would get it. And so what we have here is version 7. I upgraded this. But you know what I need to do here real quick? Extension pack. Hold on a second, guys. Right, because we all know that when you're using VirtualBox, wrong thing. When you're using VirtualBox, it's tightly tied to this thing called the extension pack. Do you guys know what the extension pack is? Because of licensing reasons, well, let me ask this: has anybody used a Type 2 hypervisor other than VirtualBox? You have. Which one have you used?
VMware.
You've used VMware Workstation. Okay. Which ones have you used? VMware Workstation. Okay, so when you use VMware Workstation, everything is it's one, one package. Part of that has to do with the fact that it's all VMware licensed. The extension pack contains technologies that have to be separate for licensing reasons. Okay, so every time, typically, that you upgrade VirtualBox, like I just did now to version 7, you should be upgrading the extension pack. And some of the things that the extension pack gives you is, for example, support for USB 2.0, 3.0. But one of the most important things, and when I teach in the digital forensics program at Mason, and they need to protect their VMs because they're doing sensitive analysis in their VMs. It allows you to encrypt your VMs. So if some threat actor gets onto your machine and wants to steal it, well, guess what? They're going to steal an encrypted VM. So once the extension pack is installed, I'm assuming it was installed just now. Right, I hope. And by the way, does anybody know how to check whether your extension pack is installed? Just curious. You click here, okay? You go to extensions, and there you go. You see extension pack, and you can see I can tell it's that version. It's version 7, so I'm good to go. Okay. If it wasn't the right extension pack, there'd be like a little red here saying that it wasn't acceptable. But just to show you how you would encrypt a VM, if you right-click on any VM and then you go to Settings, and then you go to Disk Encryption. See Disk Encryption here? See? And if I want to encrypt that VM, I just enable Disk Encryption here. Okay. I pick what level of encryption I want. So notice it supports AES 256 and AES 128. And essentially, I just pick one of those, assign a password. Now my VM's encrypted. Now that means that it's a little bit of a hassle for you now. Whenever you open that VM, what does that mean that you got to do once you open that VM? But what's the additional overhead for you if you encrypt the VM? Huh? You got to type the password. Just like when you're doing full disk encryption for an operating system, right? We'll see that you can actually do full disk encryption with Parrot also. Why would you want to do that? Well, typically if you're installing an operating system on a laptop, you want a full disk encrypted because then you're not open to like those attacks where someone boots off of an alternate operating system. Yeah. So that's to me, that's one of the main reasons you do the extension pack is so that you can get access to the encryption piece in case you need to encrypt your VMs. So what I'm going to do now, since I've already downloaded Parrot, I'm going to show you, go through the install and tell you what the most important things you need to know for installing it. So I'm going to name this Parrot. And by the way, this can be changed at any time, Parrot OS security. And so the default folder, I guess, do I want to put it here? I'm wondering because this hard drive is so slow. I may want to put it, I have an external 2 terabyte SSD drive where I put my VMs. No, I'll tell you, my VMs travel with me, right? And some of you have me in classes, I tell you, because I use Kali in all my classes that I teach in. And so I can't go, and in a lot of the universities, in fact, everyone except GW, they image the computer every week. And I can't install Kali every week, so what I do when I install it to my SSD. So that when I go back next week, and I'm doing that now in HC303, I just insert this, and I have access to my Kali. Or, so in some of my classes, I teach you guys how to do that. But it's really just a matter of pointing to this drive during the install. So to be safe, because the disk here is pretty slow, I'm going to install it to my SSD so we're not here forever. So let's make sure this can be seen. So you can do that. You don't have to install to your hard drive. You can actually do it to removable media for many different reasons. Yep, that should be that's me. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is instead of installing to the default location, I'm going to change this to my E drive. So I'm going to go to other. Okay, I'm going to go to this computer. I'm going to select E, and notice VMs. These are my VMs that travel with me. So you'll notice I have Kali there. I already have a version of Parrot. I have Unix, which is for accessing the dark net. So I'm gonna just put it in here, and I'll just leave it there. And we'll call Parrot OS security, that's fine. And then I'm gonna point to the image because we're installing from an ISO. So here I'm gonna click other, and I put it on the desktop, and I'm gonna use that image right there. Okay. Actually, you know what? That could be slow too. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to change it, and I'm going to redirect it to the ISO on my SSD. Should I do that? What do you think?
You already have one,
Yeah, I do. So based on Xavier's expert opinion on how slow things are, I think I'm going to install to my flash drive, and I'm going to grab it from here. See VM source files? I have my VM source files here. See, there's Parrot. So I'm going to install there. Okay, great. Oh, don't need that anymore. All right, so let's go here. Now, what's interesting, sometimes if you're installing a Windows operating system, you'll see this is ungrayed out for unattended installation. Who knows what an unattended installation is? That's when you do an install and you feed a file that has all the answers to the questions that it's going to ask you. So a lot of the Debian-based distros don't support these kinds of installations, so you're just going to click next at this point. It's by default going to give it 2 gigabytes of memory. I don't know, is that sufficient to install Kali? To give the VM 2 gigabytes of memory? Actually, it is. It's not sufficient for Windows. Kali actually does really well, okay, with 2 gig. But you know what? Because you don't want me to do that, I'm going to give it 4 gig, all right? I'm going to double that, although it functions just fine with 2. Why? Because it's Linux. So give it 2 gig. Notice that this computer looks like it has 8 processors. I can give it more processors at this point here. Should I give it more processors? Do we really need it? Under what circumstances do you give a VM more processor?
If you need to do a lot of password cracking.
Password cracking, yeah, exactly. So we're not going to, we could be doing password cracking in Parrot because it's a pen testing distro. So how about I'll give it an extra processor? Why not? Although, right, you'll learn in your classes that doing password cracking with a CPU is not very efficient, right? You want to do password cracking with a GPU, right? So let's click next there. I'm going to give it all this. I'm going to give it up to 2 terabytes of space. I'm allocating that, but it's not going to use it. But that's not just give it anyway. And then now I can look over what I've assigned here, and if I don't like it, I can change it. But I'm happy with what I gave it, so I'm going to finish here. So, but this is not installation of Parrot, right? Essentially, all I did was create the template for Parrot, right? So now, when I'm ready to start installing Parrot, I basically click start here, and it'll start the installation process. Hopefully my SSD won't blow up from being installed to and being used on with the source file. So this is new. This right-hand screen is new to version 7 of VirtualBox. You can just X out on that. That's where you'll see errors, should there be any. And so these are the first options for Parrot. One thing about Parrot is, like a lot of Linux distributions, you can run them live, right? What does that mean, live? I see my early college students are here. What does that mean, live? When you hear the word live, Xavier, you should know this one. When you hear live, what should you think of?
Real time.
Yeah, oh, in memory. Or memory. Remember in forensics, anything that's live is in memory. So Linux distributions from way back, you were able to run them live, which means only in memory. In other words, you don't have to install them to the hard drive. So But it turns out that to install Kali, you actually select the live option, and I'll show you why in a minute. So I'm going to click live here and try install. We know it's Parrot because of that. Yeah, I know. That's why I like Parrot. I like the little Parrot symbol there. Now, if you see errors at this point, just ignore them. A lot of times when you're creating a VM, you'll see errors and it really won't be a big deal. Okay, so that's Parrot, okay? So one thing that's different that you'll see with the Parrot that's installed now, and then when you get it installed, there's this little icon here, okay? So this is to actually install it to the hard drive, but right now, we can be using Parrot if we want to right now. The only thing we can't, and by the way, makes Parrot is very similar to what makes Kali. Look at this. Does this look familiar from your uses of Kali, right? The only difference, there is one important difference, is that Parrot, look, has an automotive theme for car hacking, okay? So that doesn't exist in Kali yet, okay? But so that's one thing that's different between Parrot and Kali. Another thing is that, see this little privacy option here? Well, guess what? You can get on the Tor network very easily here. And I'll talk more about this later, but there are two things that make Parrot Parrot. One is the pen testing tools, but two is that. The fact that you can get on the Tor network really easily and the applications are already pre-installed in Kali. In Parrot. So, but we'll talk about that later. But to start the installation process right now, right, it's not installed, there's nothing on the hard drive, you basically pick install Parrot. Okay, and so this is the Calamatis installer. Okay, and basically at this point here, I'm gonna stop at the places where I think that you need to be concerned about when installing. But right now, I'm just gonna click next here. Notice it automatically knows that we're in Eastern Standard Time, so we're in New York, so we're okay with that. It's detecting that we're using U.S. English as opposed to, British English, etc. Those other versions of English that we talked about yesterday that we shall not mention. Now we're getting to something that's important. Okay, in this screen here. So if you click on this radio button here, this is where you configure swap, okay? So is swap important? When you could, yeah, it's really important, right? Because it could really make the operation of the distribution really fast or really slow. So who wants to tell me or remind me, because I'm very forgetful, what is swap? What is swap?
Virtual memory.
It's virtual memory. Can you describe it for me though? Because I really don't know what virtual memory is. How does that use?
It's
What is it?
memory that instead of being stored on like the RAM of your computer, it's on the hard disk. So it can either be like a file or a partition on a hard drive.
Right, so virtual memory is that the operating system is going to take a portion of your hard drive and treat it as memory. It's going to treat it like an extension of RAM. Okay, so the way it works, and the example I always give, is what if your computer has 16 gigabytes of memory, but you have 20 gigabytes of data to open, right? It's not enough memory to open all the data. So what your computer will do, will use that the virtual memory as an extension of the physical RAM. So now you can open 20 gigabytes of data in 16 gigabytes of memory. So my recommendation is that you always configure swap. And as Lexi said, swap can either be a file or it could be a partition. So here, notice, and by the way, if you've installed Kali, does Kali ask you if you want to swap partition?
No.
No, it doesn't, right? Does Kali ask you, but does it give it to you?
Yeah.
It gives you a swap partition, creates it for you. Does it ask you whether you want it as a partition or a file? No, it does it as a partition. So this is one significant difference between Parrot and Kali. The fact that Parrot, first of all, if you don't say anything, it's not going to give you any swap, which could affect your performance. But notice it'll either give you, if you just see the swap here, that's swap to the partition, or you can swap to a file. Typically what we will do is that we will swap to the partition. Because historically in Linux, and I don't know some of you Linux folks, but sometimes there's problems with that swap file, like it gets corrupted, it's hard to read. So we typically will swap to a partition. So we'll pick that. And then also full disk encryption, okay? If you're doing something that may be sensitive, you want to use full disk encryption. If you're installing Parrot on a laptop, you want to do full disk encryption. So this is where you would select to do full disk encryption. And notice it's asking you for the passphrase here, passphrase here, passphrase here. Who remembers what is the encryption specification for Linux? Lux, it's called Lux. So this will be doing Lux encryption. Also, a little different from doing full disk encryption in Windows, right? Because if you guys know what a TPM chip, right, for Windows, a lot of folks that do full disk encryption, BitLocker encryption in Windows, they'll use the TPM chip to save the password. Well, you notice we're in a VM. VirtualBox doesn't have a TPM chip, okay? And so distributions like Parrot are prepared for that. And so what they'll do is instead of using the TPM chip, they'll actually save it in the partition, the password information. So if I wanted to encrypt this distro right now, all I have to do is enter the passphrases at this point. And what all that means is that now it'll be encrypted. If every time I want to reboot the OS, that just means I have to add an additional password to decrypt it. So you have to really consider how you're going to be using the distribution. Is it worth encrypting it or not? I'm not going to encrypt it in the interest of time, but just note that's where you would do it. And that's probably the best time. The best time to do the full disk encryption is typically when you're installing the operating system. You could go back and configure Lux later if you want to, but typically it's easier. You're usually not going to run into any problems if you're doing it through the installation of the distribution itself. Now, Kali, I don't remember them giving me an option to do full disk encryption on the install. Yeah, so you can already see there's a couple of significant differences between Parrot and Kali so far. Now, if you wanted, you could still do full disk encryption on Kali, right? You would just have to go do it after it was installed. You do it from the command line. So in this case here, I'm happy with everything that's here. I'm just going to select next, okay? Now, this is where it's going to ask me for my user information. So I'm David Vargas. What's my login ID? I like to do dvargas, okay? I'll keep the default name, and then I'm going to put my super secret password that you guys all know. Now, notice there's an option here for not setting a password. Notice it says login automatically without asking a password. It depends on how you're going to use the distribution. If you're not going to be doing anything that requires security, well, then you don't implement that, right? So I'll do next here, and then I'll be pretty happy with what's here. And then I should be adjusting the display so this will be bigger, but I'm just kind of lazy right now. And one second. And this is a problem here, like we were talking about this with the guest editions, right? Before. Can I do it this way? I'm gonna have to go to display. Give me a second here, guys. Where is my graphics? That's not what I want. System tools, there we go. I'm just looking for the display, because somebody sees it ahead of me, let me know.
I mean, I would assume it's under system.
Yeah, but
Like
system
at the
tools.
top, like instead of applications, I would assume it's under system.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Like preferences,
No.
hardware maybe, or look and feel. Yeah, display.
Displays, okay. So let's see here, let's change this to resolution. Let's see if that does it. Yes, okay, great. Well, there you go, that's another thing. To worry about that, right? Because I didn't expect that to happen, to not be able to see that, but now you know that all you've got to do is go into display, and now I can see the install. And now I should be able to do install now. You'll see that sometimes in Windows, the way we overcome not being able to see all the VM is by installing what they call the OS editions, right? You guys, who's had me for 230? Right, in NWIT 230, we go over the OS editions, right? So now at this point here, it essentially is going to start that installation process. So when this is done, it'll ask us to do a reboot. There will be one little problem that you may run into. I'll teach you how to fix that, and then you'll have a working Parrot OS. Now, can you install this on a flash drive? Absolutely.
Well, in essence, that's what you're doing now.
No, actually it's not, because when you do it in a flash drive, it's a little different because of the persistence issue. For example, I teach how to run Kali from a flash drive. but that means it's only run from memory. Here we're actually installing it, Norman. But the problem is when you run something from a flash drive, there's no persistence, right? In other words, everything's run from memory. So if you wanted to save a file, you can't save it to the flash drive unless you install like Kali with persistence, and that's a different kind of install. And what it does, it actually will set aside a piece of the flash drive, and it'll create a separate partition that's encrypted. So you see, it's special, so that you could save. Say if you're doing a pen test and you're doing a scan, an Nmap scan, you want to save that, you can save it. See this here, Norman, this is going to be persistent. So, but in the whole idea of running something live, that there's no persistence, in other words, it's lost when you reboot unless you configure persistence. So I don't teach Red Team here at MC, I teach it at GW. I'm going to start, I think Sylvia wants me to start teaching Red Team, but if you, since probably none of you will have me for the 246 course, and if you want to learn how to do that, let me know, I'll give you the lab that I give to my GW students on how to create Kali with persistence. Because there's the point is, when some of you get into industry, we're not always allowed to install applications on the computers we're working on, right? It'd be uncool. So for example, like if you're running sysinternals tools, you may have to run it portable, which means run the tool from a flash drive, or you could run it from the cloud. Does anybody know what the sysinternals tools are? Like Process Monitor, Process Explorer, Sysmon. Yeah, I know in 230 we go over two of those. We go Autoruns and Sysmon. But sysinternals is a company that's now owned by Microsoft, and they have about 70 tools that we commonly use in industry, right? Because when you're here in college, we're focusing on probably the most important tools, right? That we have time, because we don't have a lot of time, and we're focusing on concepts. When you guys get jobs, you're gonna have access to a whole bunch of tools that you may not have covered here at MC. Not that we don't know about them, but we just didn't have time. So for example, when I teach NT 230, I was able to squeeze in a couple of the sysinternals tools so that when students, before they graduate, they kind of know what sysinternals are. But sysinternals tools, like for example, at GW, we were going over Process Explorer and Process Monitor yesterday, is when you get a computer and you think it has malware, that's the first thing you do, right? When I was in industry, I remember I was telling them that there was a point in industry where in my company, we ran up to at least 10 instances of malware a month. 10 a month. That meant cleaning, dealing with at least 10 computers that are malware infected. We corrected that. We moved to solutions where we didn't encounter that anymore. But what do you do? This computer's got a malware. What are you gonna do? And by the way, you know how I usually found out a computer had malware? I was at a customer site. I'd be walking to the bathroom, and a user would say, "Dave, do you have a minute? Can I talk to you?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, sure, Mary." And I was like, "Yeah, my computer's not really acting well. Can you take a look at it?" And so I was telling someone earlier, so what's the first thing I do? I'll run the antivirus that's on the system, right? Then go to the bathroom, all right, and come back. But the problem is, if the computer has a malware infection already, is running the antivirus on the computer going to detect the malware? No, because guess what? It's if that antivirus would have detected that, it wouldn't be infected, right? But it's something you gotta do. You gotta run it anyway. And then what I would do is I would download malware bytes, okay? And 100% of the time, malware bytes would find the virus, find the malware, okay? But before we got to that point, if I'm just hunting around, typically I'm looking at processes, right? Because when malware runs, anything runs, it runs as a process, right? In Task Manager. Well, sysinternals comes out, has tools that allow you to see more about processes that may be malicious that Task Manager won't display for you. So those are the sysinternals tools. I don't know, maybe I should be doing some presentations on the sysinternals tools, like the most common ones. Any questions on anything? I know this is going a little slow. Usually it's a little faster, but we have some hardware limitations. Any questions like on pen testing tools in general? It's nice to see some people whose pictures I see online all the time, right? Because I only teach one class face-to-face, and that's the early college folks. And I'm seeing, what was your name? Marty, yeah, okay, I remember you, Marty, okay. I'm also used to seeing your names. So if I have you in a class, please introduce yourself, so that I know. Yes, I know. Because you put your pictures up, so I know you from your pictures.
Right.
But any questions in general?
Can I see that Parrot is Butterfest?
Yeah, thank you, and I didn't say that, and I should have. One thing about file systems, right? And I'm surprised I missed that, because that's another difference between Kali and Parrot. And the default file system for Kali is ext4, okay? For Parrot, it's Butterfest, or Better FS, or Better File System. There's a couple ways to say that. So it actually is different in another way in that it uses a different file system. Could you change that? Yeah, you can change it, pretty much. But that's the default it wants. And Better File System, or Butterfest, is becoming really popular in Linux computer because it has a lot of good system fault tolerance built in. So in other words, you're less likely to lose data that's saved to the hard drive. From what I've read, I'm not a Better File System expert, although I do know that a lot of folks in the Linux community are really excited about it, and a lot of distros are moving toward it. Right, because file systems are important, right? I mean, not just in forensics, but they determine whether your operating system can compress data. They determine whether your operating system can encrypt data. They determine the kind of permissions you can apply for files and folders, right? But they also have to do with things like system fault tolerance. Yeah. Any other questions? Because this may take a little bit. Yeah.
What are some more benefits of using Parrot over Kali?
Really, it's the privacy. So can you, for example, Kali is a pen testing tool, right? And there's a couple different kinds of pen testing, right? You can be pen testing from within the land that you're in, right? If it's what we call a white box test, the people know you're there. But the best pen tests are when you're really pretending like a real adversary. Like you would go to the customer and you find out, well, who are the threat actors that are targeting this customer? Oh, Russian APTs, okay? And then you go out and then you research, well, what are the TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that Russian threat actors use? And then you would we would attack them using those same TTPs. So is it possible, do you think, that maybe you might want to do a pen test over the Tor network?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that Parrot will do for you is that it will send all of its communications. I'll show you the script over all of it over the Tor network. So not only do you get anonymity, but also the fact that you're attacking from a certain IP address, that'll be obfuscated to the target. So if you're at the APT, and that's not unusual, APTs typically leveraging the Tor network because of the anonymity it provides, or they could be using a VPN because of the anonymity it provides. Sometimes when we find some of these APTs that are discovered, it's because of poor operational security. It's part of their OPSEC. They forgot to turn on the personal VPN, and now they can see their real IP address. Yeah, but yeah, no, that we'll see. Well, so once it's up and running, the privacy features that Parrot adds to Kali does not have. Now, could you add it to Kali? Absolutely, you can add it. That's the beauty of these distributions. Sudo apt install, and whatever you want, right? Any Kali, sudo apt install, and you can install it. But what's really good about having it pre-installed is that it's going to work. All the dependency issues have been resolved. I don't know about you. I don't know who's really excited about troubleshooting. Troubleshooting is actually good. When I was in industry, and Hugo can tell you, I don't know where he went because he's worked in the field. You learn most of what you need to learn in troubleshooting. Trying to get it to work. But at my age, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'd rather not spend my time troubleshooting. I'd rather just have it work. And so that's the advantage of all getting it, already there. All these issues have been resolved. It's going to work. Very seldomly does it not work. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, so do you for Tor, do you have to install stuff to get to it? Or
Not
do
with
you
this one.
What do you click on it?
Well, I'm going to show you. Once this is up and running, I'll show you how to do that. Yeah. Yeah. And so for those of you who, has anybody not been on Tor? It's okay if you haven't. Who's not been on Tor? Okay. So all the other ones are the cyber criminals. So Tor, when you look at how do you access the Tor network, and why do you use the Tor network? Well, cyber criminals use the Tor network. That's where you find darknet markets. Like if you remember Silk Road before it was taken down, Alpha Bay. We buy drugs, and that's all on what they call onion sites on the darknet. But when you're looking to access Tor, there are several ways you can do it. One of them, you can do it over the Tor browser, this is what I said yesterday, right? You can install this application called Tor browser. You can install that on Kali, but it's already pre-built into Parrot. You could also, there are actually operating systems that are focused on anonymity, and one of them is called Tails. Has anybody heard of Tails? Yeah, so the Tails Linux distribution, that is actually designed to be run off a flash drive. It's not designed because of the persistence.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is sometimes bad guys want to run stuff only from the flash drive because it doesn't leave any forensic artifacts. Right, you can go get on, boot from the flash drive, go to your darknet sites, buy your drugs, right? And then when you boot off your Tails, there's really nothing left. Now, and Tails actually has mechanisms built in to defeat forensics. It's called anti-forensics. So, for example, there is, when you're running anything in memory, like from a flash drive, one of the attacks that FBI likes to do, and I have law enforcement friends, right? Oh, Professor Lemma. They use what they call a cold boot attack, where they actually use special compressed gases. And what they'll do is, if they want to grab what's in memory, okay, what they'll do is they'll freeze the memory with these special cans of this cold gas. And what it does, right, because you know that when you remove memory from a computer, what happens to what's in the memory? It's volatile, right? So what happens to what's in memory when you remove it? It disappears, right? Well, what a cold boot attack does, it slows down the disappearing of what's in memory. And so what it gives them enough time to basically reinsert that into something else to capture what's in memory. Make sense? So that's one, so Tails actually, to defeat that attack, because they know that, the people who develop Tails, what they do is they wipe memory when you shut Tails down. So that if FBI tries to do a cold boot attack, well, it's been wiped. Not just deleted, right? You guys know what the difference is between wiped and deleted, right? It'll wipe what's in memory. So, this Tails has a lot of anti-forensics built in, but really Tails is designed to be used on a flash drive. Another way you can access is via Parrot, right? Parrot. And then the fourth way is using one called Unix, which is really why you need to know about type 2 hypervisors. Unix actually uses two hypervisors, and you download it and you install it, and then when you it's like it downloads as one file. I think it's an OVA, I can't remember. And then you look at VirtualBox, and there's two virtual machines there, a workstation and a server. And so what you do is you launch the server, that connects to the Tor network, and then you don't touch it again. And then you launch the workstation, and that's where you access Tor from. And so what it does, it puts an extra layer between you, the bad guy. I'm not saying you're the bad guy, but it's used for privacy purposes. It puts just another layer between you and the Tor network. So it makes it harder for law enforcement to reach back. And so how do I know this stuff? Well, I teach in the digital forensics program at George Mason. And I teach Darknet at George Mason. Why? Because I have to teach these students, who a lot of them are working for law enforcement, at the federal level. I have to teach them, look, these are the people that you're looking for and trying to arrest. This is what they're doing. This is what you have to deal with. And so they need to know about Tails. In fact, last week was the Tails Unix Parrot Lab, where they had to create bootable Tails ISOs. We talked about the cold boot attacks and all that stuff. So remember, when it comes to crime, typically, the law enforcement is behind the bad guys. I mean, the bad guys are really at the cutting edge, at the leading edge, and we're always trying to catch up. But if you want, like I said, in any of these things, if you want to know more about them, let me know. I can come in and do another talk or whatever. But once again, these are topics, typically, like I said, this is stuff I teach at the graduate level. We don't usually teach that at the first, second year level, but it's good for you to know about it, Anything else? Good questions. All right, well, I'm just waiting. Yeah, go ahead. Do I know you?
Oh, I'm Vivian.
Vivian.
Yeah.
That's right, I've seen you before.
I forgot where we were with the whole installation process. What's happening on the screen?
It's just installing. It's installing. Usually it's faster, a lot faster than this. But we've had some technical limitations in the computer, so what I'm doing now, the computer hard drive was too slow. We found that out earlier because it's older. So I'm actually reading the ISO from my removable and installing to the removable. So we're hit a little bit of a bottleneck, but this should have been done by now. In normal circumstances, we'd be done with the install. But, yeah.
So there was like 2 times where you could have done encryption.
Mhm.
Are those separate?
They're separate. One of them is in VirtualBox, to
Okay.
encrypt the VM in VirtualBox. So in other words, VirtualBox wouldn't open it, the VM, or access it until you entered the password. And the other one was the operating system encryption for Parrot. So you could do both if you want to, definitely. Yeah, but it's a little overkill. But you know, the instances where I've seen that people use that is that more that they're working in a development project. And I don't know if you know this, but developers, and you know, Professor Lemma can talk to this, they're not always using their host operating system for their development work. They're doing it in a VM, you know? So they can have their host operating system for their work, and then they got a VM where they're doing their development work. So if they're working on something sensitive, they can, you know, basically encrypt there in the VM. And they don't really have to encrypt the operating system, really. But that's just double the protection. Because, you know, when they create these operating systems, they're not thinking this is going to be installed in a VM. They think it's going to be installed on a hard drive, right? So they're doing the full disk encryption for installation on a hard drive. Yes, sir?
So if you take like a snapshot or an image of like the status of like, let's say a Parrot OS, right? And then you want to boot it in a different system, is that different system gonna ask you for both the key for VirtualBox and the actual OS, or just straight to the OS?
Okay. What do you mean, like, if you're using, you gotta remember, if you create a VM in VirtualBox, you can only open it up in VirtualBox.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so
let's
you're
say you
stuck.
just-
Yeah, you're not gonna be
Okay.
able to cross.
Okay.
Because the only difference is like, so when you create a VirtualBox VM, right, what's the format for that? What is it?
Is it VMI?
Nope, VDI. VDI. VMware doesn't support VDI, Hyper-V doesn't support VDI, so you're pretty much stuck with VirtualBox. So VirtualBox will understand what you're doing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then if you were to take it and throw it onto VirtualBox on another laptop, it would ask you for both the encryption
Yes, it
for
will.
VirtualBox and the one for the actual.
It would.
Okay.
And you don't need to take a snapshot for it to do that, but it would just ask for that, yeah. Yep, it's because it's a VirtualBox encryption password, not a VMware encryption or
Right.
VHD encryption. Yeah, good question. Anything else? Come on, dig deep, we're almost done. We're 75, well, it says 68%.
Made a big leap.
Huh?
Made a big leap. Yeah.
Say again?
It made a big leap.
It make a big leap,
Just
okay.
jumped up against it.
Did it? Okay, good. Okay, cool. And you'll see that. Let's see what else I want to say about Parrot. I mean, I highly recommend you. I mean, the more exposure you guys get as students for these other distributions, the better. And I'll tell you why. I mean, I'm glad you're here, so you can get exposure to something different. Because, you know, I was just talking to someone recently, I said, you know, knowledge really is power in the work world in IT, what you know. So you could have now, you know, you'll have something you can put on your resume, you're familiar with Parrot, you know, but definitely go home, install it, it's easy to run in a VM. But, you know, at school, we teach these major categories of things, right? Coming to things like this, it kind of fills in the little gaps. Because like I said, we don't teach Parrot in this program. Not because we don't want to, but because there's no place to put it. See what I mean? I mean, Parrot, if anything, it fits in 246, NDIBT 246, right, which is the pen testing course. But that's focused on a billion other things, right? There's no room for it. So, you know, if you have the opportunity, I know some of you have time, go in and install these, you know, see how they're different. I mean, just the installation itself, like we already talked about 6, 7 different things, how Parrot is different from Kali. And then reach out to your instructors if you have questions, or Norman, or Alucine, if you have additional questions. But the more you know, the better, especially with respect to Linux.
So compare to the other pen testing tools that are taught in 246, this
Well,
is
we only teach one other pen testing distro in 246, and that's Kali. That's it.
that's the only one.
That's the only one.
So
There are others. There are others. That's usually I'm doing Parrot because that's probably number 2. But there are other ones, other pen testing distros. These just happen to be the. And I'll be honest with you. When you looked at when I showed you the applications here for Parrot, I mean, how different does this look really from Kali? I mean, Kali has an information gathering theme, right? It has exploitation theme, right? And so if we go into exploitation, it's gonna be pretty much the same tools that you're gonna find, look, Metasploit, that you're gonna find on Kali. You know, so, but when you look at they're making these distributions, why we use Parrot? To me, the reason to use Parrot is the Tor stuff, the privacy stuff. Like I said, if you wanna do the pen testing in a more obfuscated way, like over the Tor network, then Parrot is for you. Does that make sense? I mean, that, and not to say that you can't do it with Kali, but like I said, in Kali you have to do the individual installs, and you know, something may not work, and there's a dependency, and you know, you've got to, here it's just right out of the box. I mean, you could run both if you want to. Oh, another difference between Parrot and Kali is the resource requirements. Kali doesn't really, needs more memory than Parrot does. I mean, there's just, the resource requirements are much less with Parrot than they are, especially when it comes to video, than it is for Kali. Yeah? I mean,
What situations would you use Kali over Parrot?
it's personal preference. Now, unless you're going to do pen testing that's automotive, right? Maybe because you got the here we go. If you go CAN utility, right? If you know anything about cars, they run over something called a CAN bus, so that doesn't come with Kali. And also, if you want to do the pen testing, like say if you want to obfuscate the pen testing by doing it over the Tor network, then you would do it over with Parrot. Make sense? Now, when you look at pen test, like I said, how often will you have going to have to do a pen test where you have to come over the Tor network? I gotta be honest with you, not a lot. Just not. Most of the pen tests are what we call white box. Can anybody guess why they're white box?
You know,
Yeah, but why? Why does the company usually order white box pen tests?
So you could do like a thorough control.
No, no,
Is it because most like hacks come from within the company?
no, no.
Say the company is, you know, they're live, they're actually working, they have a database full of their employees, they don't want the pen tester to tamper in.
No, but not anybody's even close.
for third party system? Or was that what you was?
No, it's cheaper. Plain and simple, it's cheaper. Guys, I've done pen tests, they're a fortune. They cost a lot of money. The last pen test that I was in had 8 people on it, a team of 8 people. And getting paid a lot of money. So they're actually cheaper. So organizations, sure, that's why they may choose a white box. Because remember, pen tests that occur for organizations, a lot of them are doing for compliance reasons. It's not because like we want to be more secure. It's because someone is forcing them to get a pen test. You know what I'm saying? Oh, we need it for this compliance, you know, regime, etc. So yeah, so it's cheaper. And another way they'll keep it cheap too is by narrowing the scope of the pen test, like you said about a database. They'll figure out, well, what's my mission critical application? And they may say just pen test that because they cost a lot of money. And also they can be time consuming, you know, but are there some that may do it like, all right, pretend you're an APT? Sure, they have a couple $100,000 to spend on a pen test, I'm saying, but not everybody does, because right, everybody operates within a budget, and especially if you got to do it every year. And so what these companies do, because I know I've been involved in this, like, you know, they'll typically won't hire the same pen test company 2 years in a row. You know, they'll hire one company 1 year for compliance reasons, and the next year they'll hire a different company. And it's pretty much, you know, what they ask you to do in the scope perspective depends on how much money they have. So it's going to ask me to restart, and I'm going to anticipate there's going to be a problem, but I'm going to let it happen just so I can teach you how to fix it. So now, like, after you're done installing any operating system, it always wants you to reboot. So we're going to reboot. What? This is messed up. What's going on here? Lexi?
The ISO is still like.
Yes, okay. So, and because I've seen students be confused by this. Oh, wait a minute, I just installed this. Why am I going back to the installation screen, right? The reason is the boot order in the VM, right? So I'm gonna let this, just to show you, well, if you see on the desktop the install icon, then you're in the wrong place, okay? So, and we should see that in a minute. So you have a couple of options for this that, right there, see install Parrot. We installed it already. We don't really, you know, we don't want to reinstall. So let me wait for this to, I gotta go to the command line. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go out to the VM. There's my VM, right? Go to settings, and what you're gonna have to do is go to system, and there it is. So what you do notice that the boot order went to floppy, optical, hard drive. Well, optical. So what you typically will do, you'll go back, this is what I do, I'll just bring that first and I'll deselect these two. And now you reboot it. So that's one of the things to watch out for. Make sure that you adjust that boot order. So now it's gonna boot up and we'll be able to access the OS. And you'll know because it'll ask me to log in. That's how you'll know. Yes?
Can you just adjust that in the beginning?
Yes, but I intentionally didn't adjust it because I wanted this to happen.
Okay.
There's a plan. Because I knew it was going to happen. So there we go. Okay, now we're looking grub bootloader, right? You need that to boot on OS, Linux OS. So already it looks different, right? It's going to a boot up routine. There's the pretty parrot. So I'll show you the how to get on Tor. And what I'll do first, I'll just launch Tor browser, which is the most common way to access Tor, and then I'll show you how this there's a script that that Parrot has to get all traffic on Tor. So there's into my credentials. My super secret password. All right. Well, that's typically this is the desktop, right? Obviously, you can make adjustments to this. So if I wanted to access Tor, okay, notice actually you can go to a couple places here, but let me just highlight this privacy section here. This is the utility called AnonSurf. That if I want all my traffic to go over the Tor network, and it's very anticlimactic, I just say start. Okay, I'm going to say this to kill any apps that may be open. It's going to ask me to authenticate. And guess what? Congratulations, you're on the Tor network right now.
Whoa.
So what does that mean? That means that anything I do here is going to be encrypted 3 times and it's going to be obfuscated. So anywhere I go now, I could be coming out of anywhere in the world. Most likely a server maybe in France, a server in in a lot of different places. So this is that. It also comes with this utility called Tor Stats. So if you're doing a lot of Tor activity, it'll tell you what your bandwidth usage is, etc. Not really useful for us right now because we haven't really done anything. But essentially, this is right there. That little thing makes Parrot. Now that said, though, you can still install this script on Kali if you want to. It is available for Kali, but it's already built in. So right now we're on the Tor network. And by the way, when I do my IP, this is actually an IP address on the Tor network. It's not a real IP. And how do we know that? Well, if I let me stop this. Okay, now actually, can we kill that? And if I do my IP here, you'll notice there's a different IP.
That's good for.
That's before and after. Yeah, different IP. Yeah, one was IP on the Tor network, the other one's IP not on the Tor network.
That's good when you want to start or stop it. It requires to authenticate.
Yes.
So.
Yep. So what else here that I want to go over? You'll notice there's lots of the encryption tools. Okay, that's not available on Kali. So once again, what makes Parrot different, it's not only a pen testing distro, it also has encryption tools. I have to be honest with you, I have not used any of these. Okay, we tend to use GPG in the Linux environment. Anybody heard of GPG? Right? We use GPG. We don't use the GUI stuff. You go right to the command line. There's Tor browser. So I can launch Tor browser. One of the things the Tor browser does when it boots, it actually gets down from what they call the Tor project, the hundreds of Tor, what they call relay servers that are on the internet, and your computer will choose 3 at random to go out of at random. So there it is. I don't know. Let me go somewhere. Actually, no. Actually, first you got to connect to the Tor network. Let me connect, and I'm going to search for cocaine. Now I'm not going to buy any, okay? Unless you got a credit card. But I'm not. Yeah.
Is that what you meant by triple encrypted? use of 3 digits.
Yeah, the 3 lanes, it's encrypted, and that's a whole nother, that's an hour lecture on how Tor works. So, okay, so there I am, right at my end. Yep, this looks a little different from the Windows version and Mac version. Okay. Unlock. What is this? Try. It should be okay. Let's see.
No. If it's connected to
Does it want a bridge? A bridge is like an additional way of the Tor network. They add security. It's kind of a secret relay, the bridge. So let's see. And then once you go somewhere, you'll see, I'll show you, you can see in the Tor browser the path that your traffic takes. The default, you'll notice the default search engine is DuckDuckGo, because DuckDuckGo is more interested in privacy than Google is. They don't, in other words, they don't create profiles on you, so when the search results are not based on reflect your profile, because Google knows everything you do, right? Because
Yeah, for Google, you need to sign in, so.
yeah, well, even if you don't sign it, they have other ways that, yeah. I mean, why do you think they give you all this free stuff, right? It's so they know who your friends are, they know your calendar, etc.
So the structure of Tor is then based on DuckDuckGo.
No, DuckDuckGo is one of the search engines.
I
They're
know.
actually like sick. They even have, if you go to, you can actually choose from other search engines.
Yeah.
Like for example, they even have, you can actually put on there a blockchain search engine. And by the way, Tor browser is based on Firefox ESR. It's a Firefox. Yeah, it's just the updates are with, like they coincide with Firefox. I'm having trouble connecting. I'm not sure if that's because I'm on this network on MC. I'm in the MC. Some networks like block Tor access. Like for example, Mason, they don't block Tor access, but I think MC blocks it, so I'm having trouble connecting. But if you do this at home, you'll be able to connect to the Tor network. And once you connect someplace you're on, and you go someplace, you click on the little icon that's here, and it'll show you the different countries that your traffic goes through. Typically, you'll go through 3 different countries, and you may come out in France. And let me give you an example of this. I had a customer who wanted a VPN, right? He was the president of a company that had managed $1 billion. And I wanted to save him $59.95 a year. So I said, Brian, let's just use the Tor browser. And so what? All right, save me $59. Okay, no problem. So the next day he called me, he said, Dave, I'm using the Tor browser. How come all the news sites are in a foreign language? And I didn't think about that. So he was going to news sites, and he would go, if you had an exit node, right? So when he went to whatever, the Financial Times he was involved in, it would say if it went out in Paris, that was his exit node. He was going to the French version of Financial Times, it would see it in French. And so guess what? This wasn't a solution for him. We had to buy him. What was the name of the VPN? The one with the bear, Honey Bear, or whatever. Tunnel Bear, $60. Yeah.
So when you search cocaine, for example.
Yeah. Oh, you interested in that cocaine? I'm not connecting. So
Is it gonna come out in different languages depending on?
Well, the darknet sites, the darknet markets, they could be in Russian. They could be, but a lot of them are in English.
Okay.
This is the problem with going to a darknet site. All of you who are planning on buying cocaine later, a lot of them are run by law enforcement now. So the day of getting free drugs on the darknet or drugs on the darknet easily are pretty much over. They've taken down Silk Road, Alphabet, Hamza. They're taking them down all the time. And the one that you sign up for may be a site that's put up there by law enforcement. So be careful. Yeah, that's why I stopped buying my cocaine on the dark side. That's why I go to DC now. I just go to DC out of corner.
Okay, so MC blocks Tor, but how does foreign countries like China how do they go there if they can just block it?
Yeah, there's more that you would have to do to the Tor browser. The technology does exist.
To get
It
around
exists.
it?
Yeah. I'm just not going to do it right now. But yeah, you can. Yeah, the countries like Russia, China, Iran, they block Tor because dissidents typically communicate over the Tor network. It's not just to buy drugs, right? It's like, say you're someone who's filing a news report that's critical of the Chinese government in China, and you want to use Tor to do that. So they actually, the Tor browser community, they created technologies for that.
So there's no any way to bypass and using Tor, for example, in those countries?
Can you bypass using Tor? I mean, what they can do, the best they can do is block you from downloading Tor. Like they do that, but once you have Tor on your computer, there are ways, the Tor project community has ways of circumventing their controls.
Okay.
David, you timed out.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I timed out. Yeah, that's fine. I figured because it's not, that's an MC thing. But if you do this at home, I'm sure you won't have a problem.
You can do it on these computers.
Hmm?
You can do it on these.
If you go through a VPN first and then go on to Tor, it does work.
That would be really brutal.
Yeah.
Because now you're doing all that encryption,
It's
yeah.
so slow.
Yeah, that would not recommend that. I think I only had an hour, so that's all I want to cover. But now you know how to install. You know kind of a sense of how Parrot is different. Of course, if you want to go and install this, go do it. Do the ISO. And if you have questions, just reach out to me, David Vargas at Montgomery College.edu.
And is it like just we Google it about?
Yeah, just go download Parrot and download the Security Edition. It's called the Security Edition. Now, if you take me for end of AT 275, we will go over Parrot, but I'm not going to be talking about the Tor part, the privacy part, because that's not what it's about. I just wanted you to see a different alternative to Kali. Because if you look here, right, you'll notice that if you go to to pen testing, wireless testing, right? So this is why we're going to be covering this. These are many of the same tools, similar tools that you're going to find
Oh, that was
on.
all.
What was it again? Sorry, security.
Yeah, most of the good tools are command line. Huh?
What was that? The security edition? What? Two?
That's called Security Edition. No, because there's different like Home,
Oh, okay.
Raspberry Pi, and there's a
Oh,
Security
okay.
Edition, Parrot Security Edition. Okay. All right. Any other questions? I don't want to do for an hour because I know you got other things to do, people to see, places to go. What was that? Cocaine to buy. Are you gonna edit that out, right? Let's edit that out. We forgot we're on camera. Actually, my bosses probably won't be surprised. All right. Well, thank you for. Oh, yeah. One question.
Is this session is?
It's recorded, yeah.
And is there any way we access it or?
Yes. Eventually, it's gonna wind up on YouTube.
On YouTube?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which channel?
Well, I'm sure it's being decided. It'll be sent out for you. You'll be surprised. It'll be sent out.
It'll be on the Discord as well as we'll send an email to you.
So you're on camera. So if you're evading law enforcement, expect to knock on the door tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
true.
Well,
You're
cool,
the only
everybody.
one
Thank you for
here.
coming. We'll see you in class, and we'll see you at the next one if you come. Okay? Thank you. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah,
Vargas,
thank
so
you.
much for giving this
You guys are
demonstration.
awesome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. See you at the next one, or in class, whichever's first. For some of you, it's class.